Lewis, we spoke earlier this week to the captain of the Seawolf, Donnie White, earlier this week on Monday. Again, you listen to that interview on the Best of 99 on the Fan podcast. He discussed having to go out on Tuesday to help out the boat April Mae. The boat April Mae, which was struck by lightning earlier in that day, lost power. Boat was kind of stranded out there. White claimed that in that interview that the boat Sushi, the boat that won the Big Rock tournament with the largest catch of blue marlin, that abandoned April Mae during a time of need. The captain of the Sushi, Charley Pereira, disputes that claim. And Charles, the captain of the Sushi, as well as Joe Visser, the captain of the April Mae, joining us now on the Keystone Automotive Group hotline. Charles, going to come to you first. I just want you to explain your recollection of that day when the boat April Mae was in need. When were you out there? At what point did you leave the boat? I know you had a fish on the boat that you had to take into the docks to get weighed, but what is your account of what happened that day?
Well, first of all, Donnie lied about the fish also. We did not have a fish on the boat. That was another pure fabrication by Donnie White, and we didn't catch anything that day, nor did we call anything in, nor did we present anything to weigh that day. It was a day that was full of scattered thunderstorms and lightning and rain, and we were very close to lightning numerous times, and it didn't surprise me that somebody got struck. So when we're running in after line's out, we were running back in. And I guess we were about 8 or maybe 10 miles from the shoals on the way back in, coming in from the northeast. And I heard a call on the radio, white sportfish boat off, to our side there in the distance. Can you help us out? We lost both engines. And I looked over and saw the approximate direction that they were discussing. I saw a boat stop. So I turned and ran to him and stood by his side and aid until he advised me that they got one of their engines started and they got underway and were making. I advised them they were making 10 or 11 according to my GPS, and I ran with them next to their side for a while until he felt comfortable. I gave him coordinates, made sure that he had a cell phone apps up and running because his electronics were down, and he advised me that they had their cell phone apps up and running, had good coverage, that they knew what their coordinates were and what their speed was, and that my presence was no longer necessary at that point. And I asked if it was okay for me to go ahead and run in and get my clients back to the dock, and so they could get a decent night's sleep for the next day of fishing if we were going to fish the next day. And he said, "Yes, sir, that's fine. We're good. We don't need you anymore." And I went on and ran to the shoals, 8 or 10 miles. And when I got to the shoals, I got basically a mayday call from them saying they lost their second engine and had 4 inches of water in the engine room. And it was blowing 20, 30 knots that day from the southwest, pretty rough. And actually very rough, the roughest day of the tournament. And so I turned around immediately and told all my guys to hang on, everybody get seated, that I was going to haul ass back to this guy and try to render aid. So I ran 33 knots in 6 to 8 foot seas on the way back to him. And I updated him the whole time, told him what range I had him on radar and everything and how many minutes I had to get to him. And I got to him and I stood by their side until they got everything under control, got the water out of the engine room. In general, tried to figure out where they were taking on water and all that, and gave them some suggestions about where I thought their water was coming in through the engine vents from the boat rocking in the heavy seas. And they appeared to get that under control. And then I stayed by their side for, I don't know exactly how long it was, but it was a considerable amount of time until they told me that they had sea tow underway to come get them, and that everything was good, and that they, their drift on their cell phones matched my drift and my coordinates that I was continuing to give them. And then at that point, they said that my presence was no longer necessary. That if I needed to get my people in, that would be okay. And I told them that I would monitor them the whole way in. I would text them updates, and then I would come back out if needed if they had any more incoming water emergencies or anything like that. We were texting at that point on our phones, and I had their number and names and all that. And I told them that if they needed me, I would come back out and assist them again. And so when I got to the shoals, I didn't see Cito yet, so I texted them, that I didn't see Cito yet. And when I got to the inlet, I texted them the same thing. And then when I got to my dock, I texted them the same thing. And I was very concerned that I hadn't seen Cito on my way back in, and so I called the Coast Guard from the dock on VHF channel 16, which is the emergency channel. Mm-hmm. And I gave Coast Guard their coordinates and told them that in the event Cito didn't get there, that Coast Guard needed to dispatch immediately and be there to back up Cito. And the Coast Guard duty officer on 16 at that time told me, thank you, Mr. Pereira and your people on the Sushi vessel. We've got it under control. We're in touch with the people on the April Mae. We're in touch with Cito, and they both advised us that everything's okay. Cito's on the way to get him, and we're monitoring the situation. And I gave them my cell phone number, and I asked them to call me if they needed any assistance, and that I'd be available all night. And the next morning, I texted with Joe again to make sure everything was okay, and they said everything was good. And a couple times I recall him offering, thank you, and can I repay you? Can I take you out to dinner? Can I give you any money or anything? And I told him, no, I don't want anything. This is my duty. We're supposed to help each other, and that's my recollection.
All right, Charley Pereira, owner and captain of the Sushi and Sushi Sportfishing, joining us here in the Keystone Automotive Group hotline, alongside Louis Fernandez, Dennis Cox here with you, recounting your story about the first time that you actually went to the April Mae. Approximately what time of day was that the first time you went over there when you heard that distress call?
I would guess it probably would have been around 4:30 or 5 o'clock. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have everything written down, what time I did all that, but I know I was running in and I was getting close to the shoals, so it probably would have been somewhere in that 4:30 to 5 o'clock time range the first time that I was called over.
Now, I know we also have John Visser, the captain of the April Mae, on the phone as well. John, a question for you: How does the Seawolf get involved in all of this? How does the Seawolf? Where do they come into this picture here?
Well, my name's Joe Visser.
Oh, Joe. My apologies, Joe.
So we correct that. What was your question?
How did the Seawolf get involved with this? Based on what was told on Monday, it sounded like they played some kind of role in this. What was that like?
We were afloat out there, and after I sent Charlie away, and we were under the belief that Cito was coming out, there was no communication on Cito's behalf to let us know that they turned around. It was Donnie that let us know that he passed Cito, because we were at that point was still within cell phone range, and we were able to communicate via radio and cell phone range on the radio for a short period of time, just because the batteries that went down later on because of running the bilge pumps and things. But we learned from Donnie that on his way out that he passed Cito and they were turned around the opposite direction, that they were not headed that way. And then we radioed them and asked them what was going on. And they said that they were told by their office that they weren't able to be dispatched to us because it was too rough.
So at what point during that time did the Sushi come back to you all, and how long were they with you before I guess it was Coast Guard that was actually able to get to you?
So like what Charlie said, Charlie was there, and I was under the belief that he would have stayed there as long as I would have needed. Mm-hmm. But I knew that we were doing okay. We were able to manage the water for a certain point on the first occasion. Like he said, it was around 4 o'clock or so, 4:30. I was the one communicating with him on the radio. He was kind of giving us some diagnostics on some things to look at, different things like that. Very intelligent man, and definitely well seasoned. And as a result of feeling like that we were in a good position at that point, engine was still running on the first occasion. I sent him away, and he was 10 foot from our boat. Everybody was, willing to help and do things necessary, but we had, roughly 8 people on the boat that were all doing the chain gains with buckets and things of that nature, and, troubleshooting at the same time and managing things. When he left, the first time, he had made it very clear that he wasn't going to sleep that night. until we had communication that we made it back. I didn't know anything about any kind of fish or anything. That was never talked about on the radio. It was really about the need and, did I need him still to stay there? Of course, when I dispatched him out that he could leave the scene out there, I was the one that made the frantic call back to him, the Mayday, because our engine went down at that point, and those seas were so high that they were cresting over the back. And I saw that, we were 1 or 2 ways away from capsizing. And our pumps at that point we lost our batteries, and it was managing it with 5-gallon buckets and hand pumps that we had. I talked to Charlie quite a few times as he turned around and let me know he's headed back as hard as he could go with the way the waves were, 35 knots or so like that. And, and I saw him in the distance, headed our way. And so he got back there very quickly. I was really amazed that there was the fleet of boats was coming by, but there was no communication with any of those guys. That amazed me as an owner and a captain myself. I've been fishing this area only 4 years. This isn't my forte. I own the boat, but I've got a crew that runs the boat, and I was really blown away by the locals. Outside of that a gentleman that was from up north that was willing to lend a hand and then turn around and haul ass back to us, and when the whole fleet was coming by, because that was one of the things that Charlie mentioned to us was that look in your rear distance, there's going to be the fleet coming by and things like that too. And we lost our radars, everything that we had to communicate outside of our 12-volt radios.
At what point, my final question for Joe on this, at what point did the Coast Guard actually get to you? At what time during the night?
Coast Guard finally got to the scene at around 1:30, 2 o'clock.
Oh, wow. That's
so you're out there stranded for a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not a night that you want to try to revisit all the time.
Yeah.
But when you're out there floating, when you get a nice boat like Sushi, guys like Donnie that go out of their way to come out there to you, all you can do is tip your hat and the respect to them for going out of their way. They didn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. We are locals, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more local support. When the CETO decided to turn around, I consider them local. I have memberships with both CETO and Towboat US. And, when they turned around and we had Donnie fly through there, no problems, that was, and they were on the catamaran. I mean, it amazed me, but that was the decision they made. I just wish the communication would have been there, because then I could have, at the time when you are minutes away from making a decision to pull the life raft out and get people off the boat, every minute counts, and you're counting the waves, you're looking at the height, and you're trying to listen to the radio and figure out what's going on. How far away are we? And, it was a very tough situation. My hat's off to Charlie, forever, out to him. He was out there. He gave us some good engineering advice and different things that helped us during that situation. And then when he came back, it was a sense of relief that we had somebody there with us, just like when Donnie came. It was good to have Donnie come out there. Neither one of the boats could tow this boat. It's a 65-foot, 100,000-pound boat. With the seas the way they were, it just wasn't economic to get it towed that way. But they definitely all helped in our survival to make sure that we were able to see the next day and have the boat.
And that's the thing at the end of the day, Joe, that everyone on your boat, everyone's safe. That's what matters the most. Joe Visser, captain of the April Mae, Charley Pereira, captain of the Sushi. Thanks so much for giving us your time and also telling us your end of the story and how things happened earlier this past week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Again, that's Charley Pereira, captain of the Sushi, and Joe Visser, captain of the April Mae, joining us here on the Heister Automotive Group Hotline.